Hi, welcome to D&D After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I, along with friend of the show, Mr. Beckham, let's bring him on. We will be reviewing the Netflix series called Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. We both watched it, and there is a lot to talk about. I'd gotten several requests of what did I think about the documentary and that I should do a review. So that is the reason that we are here. Paul from the podcast was supposed to join us, but unfortunately he is under the weather. He will be missed. I do have to say, Beckham, I would have loved to hear Paul's thoughts in regards to how the court trial played out in the US versus his knowledge about the Canada court system and how it might have played differently there, because we all know what happened with Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo.
Right. We can always do a part two to this if if you want, and bring Paul
You know
back.
what? I think it's going to be great without Paul, so I think we should keep it as is. Well,
Right
hello,
on.
everybody. Thank you for joining us. And for those in the chat, if you did watch it or if you didn't watch it, please chat along with us because I'm really curious to hear what people have to say. I know me and Beckham, while we were watching it at different times, we're messaging each other about that. And there's a lot to unpack. So very, very briefly, for those who do not know who Jeffrey Dahmer is, and I will do a full case review on him for my channel, but in the briefest of nutshells, he was the Milwaukee cannibal. He had murdered 17 men and boys during 1978 to 1991. And then he was murdered in jail by a fellow inmate. And again, that is the briefest nutshell from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So the Netflix documentary, again, called Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. It is starring Evan Peters, who I do have to say did an excellent job
He looks
portraying
just like
Dahmer.
him. What are you talking about?
What? Oh, that I like
What?
him?
No, I said he looks just like him. What are you talking about? That's what I said. Like Hollywood did an amazing job to get him,
Oh,
to look like, like like the story,
mhm.
the main
He
character of the
did
story. So,
not only look like him, but his mannerisms
right. Yeah.
were down pat with Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So the way the documentary is designed, it is into 10 episodes. Each of them are about an hour, and they go in a kind of back and forth format from the past to the present, and then back to
Hmm.
at the time, whether it's Jeffrey as a child or Jeffrey as a teenager in high school or
Right.
whatnot. So it has that flow, which I could have done without. I think it could have just gone in order of events, but I see why they did it that way. So, okay, I'm just kind of keeping
Now, Danielle, were you born when this was happening?
bitch, I'm only 21, so no, I was not around.
I kind of remember, like, I was 13 when all the when he was arrested and all the shit hit the fan and everything. I think I
Mhm.
was like 13 going on 14. I remember just kind of hearing about it. I was too busy with sports and playing outside and whatnot. But I and then of course they followed that up with the FBI movie with Helter's, what was it? What was his name? The cannibal guy, Hannibal Lecter, whatever. The
Ed
movie.
Gein.
No, the movie with the FBI guy, where I'm sorry, the FBI female agent, where she
Silence of the
goes,
Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like that kind of elevated the Dahmer story because it was right after the actual release of when everything happened. So
Hmm.
that was my kind of introduction to the thing, but I, not like you, have studied these cases. So it was kind of I was excited to kind of get something from Netflix because you know how I like to watch those shows, but I know you have a different view of that, and I guess that's what brings us here, right? Because you just never know what, if you're getting the reality or if you're not getting the reality with these new movies or TV shows that are
Yes.
coming out.
And we are going to completely talk about that because I have a whole hell of a lot to say about that. But to answer your question, Beckham, no, I was a little kid um, when he was arrested. So
Mm,
so the murder stopped in 91
hmm.
and I was born in 84. So I was still little. So no, it wasn't on my radar.
Not yet. Not
I
yet.
was too young. So
Yeah.
even though I was always into true crime as a kid, that was just a little bit past what I was reading at the time at
Right.
that age. So I think we just need to start with I just kind of want to touch on the psychology of Jeffrey Dahmer. And because one thing that we saw in the show, and if you read about Jeffrey, then you'll get that feel too. I've done some book recommendation videos, and some of them that I've recommended are on Jeffrey Dahmer, which I've bought and read prior to this documentary. But Jeffrey Dahmer's very fascinating, and we got to see that during this Netflix special in regards to once he was arrested, he never denied anything. He was always forthcoming, um, but
I
also
noticed that.
his tone has always been very, to me, very lax, not really
Mellow. I was gonna say
comprehending.
mellow, like just yeah, like
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. A very almost monotone
Calm,
attitude.
like calming almost.
Yeah, just not and that's how he was in general, but especially at a time like this where it should have been heightened, it wasn't. And he was also, to me, one of the serial killers that was so forthcoming with all of his crimes. He never denied anything. It was almost like a weight was being lifted off his shoulders. So, unlike other criminals who sometimes admit to a lot, but also admit to a lot that they didn't do just to get that added to them, he just was very open. And one thing, I can't remember if they touched upon it in the documentary. They might have just briefly, but if they didn't, back when Jeffrey Dahmer was in Florida, he was suspected for the Adam Walsh kidnapping. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The little boy of the guy who ran the not Crime Stoppers,
The
the
true
America's
crime top 10 FBI most
top
wanted.
10. Right. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow, I
Dahmer was
didn't even
very
know that.
adamant that he had nothing to, he was down there at the time, but he had nothing to do with it. And
Wow, I
boys
didn't know
that
that.
young were not of his interest. So he was ruled out as a suspect. But of course, everybody
Wow.
wanted to believe, hey, we can solve this. Let's connect two and two, but it didn't add up. So
Wow.
that's just kind of worth noting. But a little bit again about Jeffrey Dahmer is from a psychology background. And I'd love to hear your perspective, Mr. Beckham, as a kind of criminal justice background. But Jeffrey Dahmer is very different than most other serial killers that are notorious or famous or that I cover here, is because he didn't kill for the thrill. His was a very sense of emptiness that he didn't want people to leave and he wanted them to stay, and then would go a step further with with cannibalizing so that a piece of them was always with him. It was just so different than any other killers that mostly just kill for the thrill. So I found that fascinating, and I always have found that fascinating. But Beckham, how did you take this from your
So
background?
when I was okay, so from just the first episode, the first couple episodes, they do go back in time to his when he was a child, and it kind of shows his interest with science and how the animals, right, and dissecting, and I think his dad got him into that, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Um, so of course they they quickly established that he's not in a good sensible home. The husband, the mom and dad are arguing all the time. I'm not sure if the mom was into pill popping or alcoholism or whatnot. The dad was gone a lot, right? So it
Hmm.
wasn't a very stable home for the children in the home because I think he had a smaller brother, correct? Right?
Yeah, David.
Yeah. Um, so that was to me like, what if he had had a stable home? What if his interest in the science would have been such a he would have had such a keen interest in that would have stabilized it would have stabilized whatever was going on in his head at the time, because you of course you study these people a lot, and I have serial killers, but could there have been a moment where that was like could have been sort of the innocence protected and then just life would have just gone forward, or was there something already chemically imbalanced with him that it was not something that could have been stabilized. Do you see what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
where I was thinking. That's the whole time I was trying to think and rationalize everything from the psychology standpoint of it. So
Yeah, you make a lot of good points right there. What I take away from what you were saying is flipping it to a psychology aspect again, is the whole argument of nature versus nurture. It seems here he was failed in both regards. In regards to his mother, with let's just call it what it is, substance abuse of what
yeah,
form,
there you go. Yeah,
pills,
substance.
alcohol,
Right.
mental illness, clear
Mm-hmm.
mental illness.
That's right.
And
She was showing signs of that. That's right.
yep. And then the way his mother was towards him growing up. So then we get the nurture side. And I know Lionel gets, his father gets a lot of
Mm-hmm.
heat. I can see it on both sides because he was a scientist. So I can see how he's sharing that side of himself with his son and thinking his son might go in the same direction. I don't think his father had the intent to set him up in the way that it played out, but nonetheless it did.
Right. Now, has it been proven that those characteristics are passed down? Like the whole mental health thing? Is it absolutely proven? Like his imbalance could have came from his mom or whatever?
I mean,
Because that,
statistically speaking, is mental, depending on what type of mental illness somebody has, is it genetic?
yeah,
Yes.
genetic.
I'm not stating she had X, Y, or Z,
Oh,
just
okay, that's
statistically
right.
speaking.
Yeah, but she did
Yes.
in the show, it showed like she did suffer from some sort of mental health
Hmm.
issue, and yeah,
And
that's
that
true.
that is true. That is true. So
Okay.
that is factual from the show. She used substances while she was pregnant. So there's that. That, as we know, can alter a
Mm.
baby and
So I didn't
have
know
long
that.
lasting
Okay,
effects.
I did not. Yeah, I did not know that. Yeah, when the child, is growing in the womb and everything, and formalizing, all that stuff is. I mean, that's why they tell you don't smoke, don't do this, don't do that, because of course you can harm the child at any point of the growth
Yeah.
process or the developmental process.
And then we also have to think of the times back then, medication was so different. So even if she was suffering from whatever mental disorder she had, doctors could have put her something for it, which could have been, I hate to say a lesser of two evils because that's a horrible thing to say during an episode like this, but it's one of those, what is worse, the side effects potentially or her behavior not on some type of medication. Obviously, she was abusing any medication she was on. So again, we have to just kind of keep all of those things in mind. So I see a lot of people still coming into the chat. So hello, welcome. And again, if you guys watch this documentary, by all means, I see the chat going on as we're talking. And this is, everybody has, I see some kind of harsh critiques on Lionel Dahmer. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I will get into more about him, but the show, I feel, and then Beckham, I want to know what you think, portrayed Lionel Dahmer very innocently, I feel, in like the first 70%, and then like the last 30% of the show, just horribly in regards to writing a book, which he did, but it just made it just seem so cold and just like there are victims that are dead here and you're really just trying to cash in on your son.
Uh, well, it establishes how he is with the family at first, and he's always gone for work. He's not home very much, but he tries to do the best for his family. That's what they try to
Mhm.
portray. He's always there. He's always supportive of Jeffrey. He's all he
Supportive
got
or bailing him out?
that. Yeah, exactly. And he was there for him when he got him into Ohio State. He helped get him to Ohio State. I know he was angry about what happened with that. Then he's even supportive with the Army. I mean, he was just always a support in the show. He was always to me a supportive parent, right? Even when the
Mhm.
mom left, I mean, he gave him a house he could stay at when he was 18 to try to kind of, was he trying to push him off, or was he really trying to be supportive? That's something
Mhm.
you had to decide for yourself, right? But
Yep.
to me, the show is try to establish early on that he definitely was a supportive one in the household of between him and the mom.
I mean, definitely compared to his mother.
Right.
I mean, that goes without stating. Um, One thing that you pointed out that has always boggled my mind during this case is Jeffrey was alone in the house. The mother and brother David left.
Hmm.
Lionel was now with his new wife. Nobody knew Jeffrey was alone for quite a while. This wasn't just like a month or a week. This was a long time. How does that just happen? Who's paying the mortgage? Like there's just so many questions. How did that happen?
I was left alone in my senior year in high school for about 4 or 5 months. And so my dad left the fear of God in me. If you do anything, I want to kick your ass. Like literally would kick my ass. So if I did anything stupid with the house, and I had neighbors watching me the whole time, right? So what could I do? So you know what I mean? Even though I was
Mhm.
17, almost 18, it was during my senior year high school. But I was still busy. I was busy with baseball and stuff. But still, I could have done some stupid shit, but I didn't. For the foundation of discipline that was laid out, there was definitely a foundation of discipline for me that was laid out. That hey, don't mess up here, or whatever, right? That
Mhm.
wasn't the case in Jeffrey, with Jeffrey because his dad just left him there, right? I mean, he could do whatever he wanted. He left him a car. He had a car. I
Yeah.
forgot how he was getting cash, but or money to get food or
And
whatever.
beer,
But
lots of
and
beer.
beer, yeah, always beer. But man, he could just do whatever he wanted because Lionel left it like that. He let him
Mhm.
loose. And if you go back to those years when you're that age, you're still sort of in your teenage years. To me, you're still very young. You're
Mhm.
still. I don't think you're turning 18. They say you're an adult, but you're really gonna do a lot of stupid stuff anyway. So
Yeah.
really leaving a 17, almost 18-year-old kid with a whole house to themselves with just money to eat and whatever in a car, dude, you're really asking for something to happen. You really
Yeah.
are. If you don't lay any rules down, if you don't have anybody checking up on him or anything like that, you're just waiting for something to happen. And sure enough, as supposedly that's when he had his first, right? The first murder
Mhm.
with the
Yep.
runner, I believe, the runner guy.
Nope.
Or the guy that came, what? Yeah, was not the one that was visiting or something where they found his body.
To me.
Something. That's
Yeah.
right. There you
Who
go.
was trying to go to the concert. Yeah.
That's the guy. Yep. There you go.
Yeah. So one comment that we have here from Kat is, didn't the dad think the mom was still in the home? Yes, Lionel did still think that
Oh, that's
his
right. Okay,
ex-wife
but she
and
had
David
taken off.
were in the house.
But he didn't follow up. He didn't.
No.
There was a break of communication, right? So there was no a
Oh, big
follow
time.
up. There was no phone call. There was anything. He just showed up with a new girlfriend.
Mhm. Yeah, pretty much. Yep. And the documentary, there's very few moments of brother David. And in real life, David has lived under the spotlight for a long, long time. Most people are not aware that Jeffrey Dahmer had a brother. I think a lot of people seeing this
I didn't.
documentary, I've heard comments, he had a brother. And I'm like, yeah. When stuff like this happens, like documentaries like this, I just feel like I get so fearful that people will try to, where is he? Let's find him. Let's find him. And it's like, no, let
I
him
didn't
be
know he had
out
a
of the
brother.
spotlight.
I had no idea until the show.
Exactly. So, let's get into some of the things that were, I want to be kind here, but false with the documentary. And Mr. Beckham knows, Paul Cass knows, anybody who knows me in real life knows, I don't tend to watch documentaries on serial killers, especially from Netflix. I'm not shaming Netflix. They're putting out a great entertainment series, documentary, movie, if you will. I give them credit. They're doing what gets them ratings, what makes them money. From somebody who knows the cases, it gets very frustrating because a lot of things get twisted. A lot of things get just, it never happened. And it's so frustrating because the story's written for itself. It's horrific. It's tragic. There's nothing more to add to sensationalize it. And it always plays out with this. And that's why I get so frustrated. So I tend not to watch it. And I was not going to watch this, but I got so many requests. What were my thoughts? I should do a review. So hence why we are here. So I'm just going to go in order of my notes of when I was watching it and started yelling at my TV.
I thought you were gonna be hyped about it the whole time. I was like, man, I thought I was gonna see messages from you going, "This is a great show. This is the best one ever." And well, because with Peters, being the highlight of the show, or
Peters?
Evans.
Evan Peters.
Yeah, Evan
He
Peters.
did.
Yeah.
I'm not taking it. What he was excellent. The way he portrayed Jeffrey was excellent. The demeanor was spot on. He nailed the look. Likewise, just like in the Ted Bundy
I never saw
documentary
that one.
or movie, I should say, that Zac Efron portrayed him. Zac Efron, and I'm not a Zac Efron fan, nailed the look and all the mannerisms. So I 100% give credit to the actors where it is due. So yes. So there was the first thing that jumped out at me when I was just like, oh, of course this just has to be added. And it happened so quick that people might not even notice. But at one point when Jeffrey Dahmer is in his apartment and in his living room, the camera pans down to the side table in the living room. And on the side table was a satanic Bible. And I was just like, oh, why do we
Really?
have
I never
to
even
add
noticed
Anton
that.
LaVey in
Wow.
this? So I've read a lot of where it's, oh, he was a Satanist, Jeffrey Dahmer worshiped the devil, and so on and so forth. No, he did not.
There's people that actually think that on the case?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And when you see this, like, again, it was just subtle.
I missed it, dude. I didn't even notice it. Yeah, I missed it.
When I
was
tell
making
you,
sure.
I sat with a notebook for everything, and I filled 1.5 brand new full notebooks of just notes on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember just eating vegetables that whole week I was watching it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So when Jeffrey Dahmer eventually had to move in with his grandmother, which we do see quite a lot of in the show, one of the things that it portrayed him as, and I know some of these to some people might seem minor, but it really isn't, because it makes more sense to the real story as to how things played out and how he went undetected for so long. So it showed him as living upstairs in an upstairs bedroom. Because at one point his grandmother goes to change the sheets and he says, no, I'll do it. In reality, he was staying in his grandmother's basement. And as you can see, she was an older woman, so would have had difficulty going down those stairs. And that is why he stayed down there and why he got away with having that mannequin for so long. So this whole that she went in there and she discovered it through that means is false. It was eventually discovered that he did have it, that scene where he flipped out on her and got in her face and broke a glass. I have not in my research found how accurate that is, but I'll give Netflix the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Wow, yeah, I had missed that part of it. I didn't even catch that myself. I think I was thrown off by the smell. Well, how they were when they were filming, how they filmed it with the, it was hot. Everybody was always sweating, the smells and the noises and stuff. So and I think that's where they wanted your attention to be. So, and that's where mine was,
Right. Because throughout the whole series, neighbors, his family was always commenting on a smell. So
right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which obviously what we know is decomposition, but at the time, people did not know that. Quickly, Wolf, yes, he would always play the exorcism, one of the exorcism movies, and that was his way of kind of starting, I hate to say a routine, but he kind of did have a routine down pat and how he would connect with his victims, drug them,
I thought
and
he was
then
playing WrestleMania tapes for the guys, guys in short and tights and stuff.
no.
A lot of gay rod, lot of, gay porn or whatever he was making them watch. A lot of memes were made out of that. I mean, you've seen them, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, if you're gonna force somebody to torture them, make them watch something, and whatever the meme is, they'll put a show or whatever in the little in the TV part of it. That was funny. It became a meme.
um so let's get into Glenda Cleveland, the neighbor. So in the show, his
Hmm.
neighbor is the one that made the 911 call to the police regarding the victim, 14-year-old Konorak, who was then, as we know, not only murdered, but he had a hole drilled into his head,
Wow.
where acid was poured in. Jeffrey had left for alcohol, came back. Konorak was naked outside. The police were called by a neighbor, and then Jeffrey was able to smooth talk his way and say, "No, that's my 18-year-old boyfriend. We had a fight. He's drunk. Leave him with me. See, here are some pictures that I took."
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There was a lot of like erotica stuff going left out or whatever, and the police were just like, "Dude, y'all are doing some funky stuff. We're out of here." And
Mhm.
then so did that all happen that way, or
They Glenda Cleveland, so the neighbor was not the one that made that 911 call. They're making it so
like she's the one that did
that
it,
she
right?
was the one, but it wasn't her. So that they're
Interesting.
mixing that, but I guess I see why they're doing that, just for the interest of simplifying, but that's not how it played out. And with Conorak too, what's really sad is that not only was he was clearly underage, and if you see pictures of him and of the actual victim Konorak, he looks very underage. The police in the Netflix documentary, when you see them get to their car and radio back like, "Oh, it's just a lovers quarrel," so on and so forth, it's down. This is the one thing that Netflix downplayed, that radio call back, because you can actually listen and find the audio of the real
Oh,
clip,
really? Oh,
and
wow, that's interesting.
it's so much worse. It is so much worse.
Oh, wow.
And Netflix really downplayed it. They gave you like a glimpse of like, "Oh yeah, haha, well, gay
Were the
lovers are
police
doing this."
derogatory in the radio callback?
You can find it.
No,
I've
I say
heard
were
the
the
audio.
police derogatory in the radio callback back
Were
to
they
the
derogatory?
yeah, like, oh, these gay
No,
pep
no, they
beep
were
beep
not
beep. Yeah.
derogatory. They did
Oh,
not
okay.
use any derogatory terms, but there was a lot of laughing and a lot of joking and
Mm.
banter back and forth between the two that you can hear, and that wasn't quite like that in the show. Out of all the times that Netflix, is trying to drum up things and make things a little bit more exaggerated, they should have just done it as it was. I was surprised that they minimized it the way that they did.
Mm.
So, but that's just
Mm.
my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, Courtney says, Beckham, you need to listen to it. Yep.
Well,
Um,
before you go past Miss Cleveland,
mhm.
uh, you know, that's my friends. You want to talk about that now?
Yes, if you would like to bring it up, I was hoping you would bring it up.
Yeah, Miss Cleveland was one of this guy that I've worked with for a long time. It was so he comes up to me, he's like, "Hey man, you've been watching that Dahmer story?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I started it." Um, he's like, "You know that lady that makes the 911 call from this show?" And that's how he referred it to her. And he's like, I'm like, "Yeah, the neighbor, the one." Yeah, he's like, "Yeah, that's my aunt." And I'm like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's my mom's favorite sister on on her on that side of it." And I was like, "Wow." And I was like, well, if you're, you guys are from Mississippi, how did she end up, up north? And she, at some point in her life, she had moved to Wisconsin, right? And then over. So, she had moved away along, probably in her earlier years, um, up north. And because I've known him for so long, right? And we have a banner, that banter back and forth that I can like with you guys. I can ask you. I feel I can ask you anything now because we've known each other long enough. And it was the hot topic at the time because the show had just come out. It was did she eat the sandwich that supposedly he gave her or whatever.
And we're
And he's
gonna
like,
get to
"No,
that.
man, no." I was like, "No, no, that's not true." He's like, "I don't think," because he had met her a few times, of course, growing up. Of course, he hasn't seen her. I think and I believe she's deceased now. I'm not sure,
That's what you
but
had told me. Yeah.
yeah, but he downplayed that. He's like, "Nah, man, she wouldn't have done that. Not from what I know and from my mom knows." But yeah, the family was definitely um keen on the story because of course it's their family that she's involved in it. But they were really proud of the actress that played her. Her name is let's see, Niecy Nash is the actress that played
Yeah.
Glenda Cleveland, and they said that she nailed it. I mean, they were kind of, they were proud of how the actress portrayed her, and the mannerisms and the look and everything. So Hollywood really did a really great job of kind of making the people look how they were, right? So that was very, very interesting because, and I was cutthroat. I went right to the main question: did she eat the sandwich?
And we had conversations about that.
But yeah, but anyway, so yeah, so it was his aunt, and I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that it brought up memories for them, as far as their family goes and things like that.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we'll get, yeah, there's more on that, what you just said that we'll touch upon. Courtney, yep, we're gonna get to that last comment. So, okay, in regards to what would what would have been Jeffrey Dahmer's first victim, the jogger in the woods. So we all see Jeffrey Dahmer have this daydream fantasy, if you will, where the jogger does come back, and then there's this whole series of events. But that doesn't happen because then what we see is Jeffrey run out of the woods with, he's waiting with the bat. The jogger runs by. He comes out with the bat, scares the jogger, and the jogger runs away. That did not happen. There are interviews with Jeffrey, audio interviews that you can hear for yourself, where basically in what he reported to police, he wanted to attack the jogger. He wanted him to be, I hate to say his first victim, but he would have been his first victim because Jeffrey wanted him. And again, has issues with people leaving and therefore kills them and they stay. He did hide in the woods. That day, the jogger did not appear. That's all that happened. So the jogger never ran
That's
by,
interesting.
saw Dahmer with the bat, got scared. That never happened. So when I saw that altercation, I'm like, that never happened.
How much time was that scene? Like, how much effort did they put into
It
that
was
scene?
so long.
Right.
The
And
daydream part where
yeah, right.
when
So
I
they
first
really
saw that,
they really put a lot into the scene for it not to be, for not to be a real event. Wow.
I thought Netflix was going to play it off like he did bring him back. I was like flipping out. And then when I'm like, okay, all right, clearly it was a daydream, didn't happen. And then the way they did, I'm like, oh God, Netflix, what are you doing?
They should have hired you as the correspondent to the story, or for the
Huh?
writer. They should have hired you as a correspondent for the writers, or the writer or writers of the show.
I
So,
know, shit. Like, I know. Yeah. That would be a dream job. Netflix, hire me. As I trash your documentary, Netflix, hire me. If that's not good self-promotion, I don't know what is. So Courtney, just a few moments ago, mentioned in regards to Jeffrey Dahmer when he was in the army and that he was released. He had an alcohol problem. Shocking. So that is true. It has come out, and there have been other documentaries on Jeffrey Dahmer, like actual interview documentaries, where several men have come forward who were in the army with him, and they have claimed to be, at that time, they were sexually assaulted and raped by Jeffrey Dahmer.
And none of it was reported?
One of, if I recall, I can't remember. I
And you know what?
believe
Maybe with
some
the
reported it
times,
and
it's something
some
you didn't
didn't.
report. Maybe you just didn't talk about it back in those. Now everything's reported now. I mean, now it's like you have
Mhm.
a
Yeah, in
counselor
the
on hand. You have all kind. You know what I mean? There's steps to
mhm.
that in the military. I don't want to
Yeah.
sidestep into the subject, but yeah, it's probably kept more secret. You know what I mean? Like embarrassment or whatever back then, and something
Mhm.
it was not talked about or shared or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't grab the name of that documentary. I really should have. The one that interviews the men that Jeffrey Dahmer did rape and sexually assault, and
Yeah, I didn't know that.
the
I had no idea about that. There was multiple
mhm.
people. That's crazy.
Yeah, they kind of go through it, really fucked up their lives, like, really fucked it up. And this was before Jeffrey Dahmer turned into the
Right,
Milwaukee Cannibal.
right.
Um, because what they went through is
It
just
was sort of it was sort of his testing phase, I guess. I mean, his figuring out phase, probably, right? I
mhm.
mean,
'Cause he did
okay,
drug.
so like for serial killers, do they go through a testing phase, Danielle, like where they're trying to figure out what they're going to be kind of into? It is
What they're gonna be
well,
kinda into.
you know what
I
okay,
wouldn't
you know what
agree
I'm
with that
saying, like
statement. There's always a progression, and
there you go,
there's
progressionary
it
stage,
goes
right?
back to the triad of, most common feature is bedwetting, harming animals, and starting fire. So there's that basic, not every single serial killer has, but in generally speaking, there's at least two, if not all three factors. There's always a progression of, if you think about it, somebody just, mm, no one come for me when I kind of just say this just so casually, but somebody who breaks into women's homes and starts to just sexually assault them. It doesn't just happen overnight. Typically, um, they could start out with, kind of admiring neighbors, and then they start peeping Tom, and then they maybe
Right.
just break
It's a
in
good
and do
that's a
some
good point.
robberies. There's
I see what you're
always a
saying.
progression.
Progression there. That's the word I was looking for. Progression.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
And we saw this with Jeffrey. He didn't just wake up one day and start dismembering human bodies. There
No.
was
Right.
an interest in animals and then doing
Right.
that. And so
And then
there was a
yeah,
progression
that's what
with
I'm
it as
saying.
well.
It seemed like he had an interest in like early on with scientific studies and then animals and things like that. Like his dad was, his dad was into kind of into that stuff. So
Mhm.
gotcha.
Yeah, which Jeffrey Dahmer could have gone the other way, and you know what I mean? It's just, but yes, there is a progression. And so the statement of testing to figure out what they want to do, it doesn't
Well,
quite
that's
work.
what I meant, dude. It's 10 o'clock, okay, at night. Come on, I used the wrong word. Progression.
Oh, excuse me. I'm the host. I can boot you, and Paul's not here to bring you back.
That is true. Good night, everybody. On that
um,
note, I'll be back in one quick second.
oh, Jesus Christ. So while he's gone, I'm just going to quickly scroll through the chat. Um, thank you, Paul. And once again, shout out to Paul Cast, who was not able to join us. Sad, because I definitely wanted to because he knew a bit about the case. Not as much as me, but he knew a bit. So I would have really loved to get his input on this, but oh well, another time. So while back, oh, that was quick. Okay.
I needed a drink. Sorry.
So, okay, my next note actually would go a bit along your ideas of progression. So, where Jeffrey Dahmer, it shows that he got a job at a plasma center and he was doing blood IVs. We saw the scene where he took home several vials of blood, drank them. It went down his chest. There was that whole scene. In reality, that did not happen. He did work at a plasma center doing blood IVs. What he did at one point was he took a vial, drank it, and spit it out because he
Hmm.
ironically did not like the taste of blood.
It was a testing phase. You see what I'm saying?
You know what? I'll give you that one.
Thank you. That's
give
what
you
I'm
that
talking
one.
about. That's where I got the idea from, I think, a long time ago, and it stuck in my head, and it came out
Mhm.
tonight. There you go.
Yeah. So, but that whole scene of it never happened. Never happened. So we talked about, you had mentioned earlier, one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims, Stephen Toomey. He was the one that Dahmer brought to the hotel and had drugged him. And then we see Jeffrey accidentally drugging himself by drinking the wrong glass and waking up, and Stephen Toomey is beaten and dead. In reality, Jeffrey did not accidentally drug himself. That did not happen, but he did. Jeffrey claims that he did drink so much that he blacked out and woke up to Stephen Toomey next to him, and he was dead. And Jeffrey states he does not remember how that happened. So it played out a little bit differently. And as we saw with kind of seeing Jeffrey's reaction and having to get luggage and transport the body back to where he was living, it just, we saw that, and that really was the start of all of this. And
Right.
it sucks because Jeffrey Dahmer was, and he was considered a good-looking guy in the gay community. There's no getting around that. He did not have a hard time attracting men. He was very popular at the
There was a couple of
bathhouses.
scenes
That
where
is
he
true.
goes, yeah, there was a couple of scenes where they show him going to a bar or a club, and
Mhm.
he picks up a guy or a couple or whatever, goes home with
Yeah.
a couple of them or whatever. So definitely had the ability to go out and, like you said, pick up men.
Yeah. Sometimes what we see with some killers is their inability to, they feel they've been wronged, or, I want to attract a woman, but I can't. So I'm angry. Therefore, so now I act out. Jeffrey had no problem attracting men. And I know that there's been in past studies of him, there was claims that, he was racist and that's why he was targeting mostly African American men. And that's not true.
Right.
He had a certain type, and it was
Sure.
mostly based on physical appearance. He liked tall, lean, muscular, but again, on the lean side type of men. So he had a
I went through a
specific.
progression too. Growing up, I like to start out with blondes and then redheads and then brunettes and
I just can't.
then one, then twos, then threes. I'm just playing, dude.
Oh my God.
I'm just sorry. Let's go back to Dahmer.
Okay. What type are you at right now? What ladies can expect to
I'm just
DM you
playing.
and get a Mr. Beckham
No,
shirt?
let's go back. Let's get back on track here.
Okay. So we already discussed Glenda and the 911 call. And one thing that I did like about the documentary is they did play, and it says on there, the actual 911 call of the neighbor calling in regards to, again, just to jump back a little bit, Conorack. So they do play the actual 911 call, which I did appreciate. So in regards to, look at that. Nice dodge. So there was the instance of Jeffrey Dahmer's neighbor, Dean, the gentleman that had moved into the building, and then Glenda noticed he was missing. His mail was piling up. He was nowhere to be found. It is true that there was a man named Dean that did move into the building. Jeffrey Dahmer got to know him. He did go missing, but was then found. He was found dead in his own apartment. Dahmer denied any involvement in that murder, but he didn't just go missing and then never appear again. So that was inaccurate in regards to the Netflix documentary. So, and I do tend to believe Jeffrey Dahmer because he's very open with everything he's done.
Right.
So, and some may disagree, but I feel if he did have involvement in that, one, he wouldn't have just left Dean dead as an apartment. That was not Dahmer's MO, and it never was. So
See, I thought, oh, well, I mean, to me, it was like, yeah, that was kind of different for me because I always thought he was like, he's just always like not open about it. But when he was caught, how he tried to, get off the police or whatever, he was just like, yeah, just so mellow and chill and just told the truth, didn't lie, so that he made the police so uncomfortable that they would have arrested him or done whatever, right? See, I thought it was the opposite before the show. Like, I thought he was like super secretive, that he would have fought the police. That's what I guess that's just the norm, right? What you think about a true serial killer. But yeah, I was kind of like surprised at that angle, or that
yeah,
something.
there's both ends. There's the denying, there's the I wasn't involved, and then there's the like O'Toole, that whole killer of not only claiming what they could have done, but then adding on a whole bunch of ones where it's just, wait a minute, you weren't even in the area, so you couldn't have done that, and you're claiming, so I kind of see it go both ways.
I would say something right now that I thought would be funny, but it's probably too much for the show, so I won't.
Wow, usually I'm the one with the comments that are too much.
Yeah, I'll put it in the private chat, but I'm not gonna say it. But I would be.
Okay. And to our audience, I'm so sorry, Mr. Beckham is now being shy on camera. So let's see. My next note. So the two officers, the ones that initially came to the Conorack call, called back to the station, again, kind of laughed about the lovers' quarrel, if you will, when in reality, the phone call was just so much more. It shows them lose their jobs and then get reinstated. And then it shows them get a promotion within the Netflix show. And it was just so kind of quick that many people might not remember that. In reality, those two officers did not get a promotion. Again, this is just kind of more minor facts, but again, things where Netflix kind of took the liberty to twist, and I don't like when they do that. So I really want to point out.
I hope I don't forget this one question, but I'll wait for the end because I want to ask you if you would have been the correspondent to the writer of the show.
Okay, yeah, we're getting near my notes, so
okay, yeah, don't remind me here in a second.
Okay, so one thing that it's hard one way or another. I can't in my research say, yes, this is true. No, this isn't. So Netflix, I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Lionel Dahmer, when he he writes his book, which that did happen. And it shows him talking to his wife, which we were talking off camera. Molly Ringwald played Jeffrey Dahmer's second wife. Yeah. Yep. Lionel says to her that he had feelings like Jeff. And I'm like, what the hell?
Did you recognize her?
Yeah.
I did not recognize her, man. Like, I'm a big, 80s movies kid. I grew up in the 80s, little kid, but
you grew up in the 50s.
I did not recognize her, man. I honestly did not recognize her.
Yeah, we talked about this off camera before we went live, and Beckham was age shaming me, being like, "Oh, you were way around back then. You remember all this."
I was like,
no,
what? I was like, Danielle, you're like 42. Stop lying.
Oh,
I'm just playing. Don't boot me yet. we still got.
Paul can't bring you back from this one. Virginia Woolf. We will get to that. So let's see. Okay. I can't find, because there's so much more on Dahmer and isn't Jeffrey Dahmer, and not so much on Lionel that I could not find whether that was true or not. So just wanted to point that out. And I'll save that. Oh, sorry. My notes jump around a bit. Okay, we're going to talk about it. The sandwich.
Yes.
The sandwich.
Dude,
You
I
messaged,
literally,
I wasn't there yet in the show, and when you
I went.
messaged me, I'm like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?"
Well, that's because that's when I went. Get it? I went hard at my friend with that question because I was
Mhm. You
because
hear
I
that,
was like,
ladies? Beckham goes hard, like and
and that was,
subscribe.
I was like, dude, did that really happen to your aunt? Do you think she really ate that sandwich, dude? He's like, no, no way, not. She wouldn't have done that. No, no. And I was like, all right, man. I just had to ask.
See, I get how you think that's funny. I
Well, it's not
would
funny. It was just because like the
no, it's
banter with
like
me,
if I
yeah,
was
because
a
we joke around
normal.
a lot. Like him and I do. I've known him for like a long time, and we joke around a lot. So like I could do that with him. You know what I mean? And it's just,
Yeah. Well, that was the part of the show. I was livid, livid. So, okay, for those who have not watched it, and spoiler alert, so earmuffs. So the neighbor Glenda had made,
right.
and it's true that she had made complaints to the property manager about the smell coming from Dahmer's apartment. That's well documented and that is well discussed.
Did she contact the city and complain to the city or not?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't
Okay.
know.
I thought she might have because I think she was like, they're not listening. I gotta go. I gotta go to the next the level.
Mhm. So the landlord serves Jeffrey an eviction notice in the show and says, you got to go. And so Jeffrey, puts two and two together. Like, I know it was Glenda. So he knocks at her door, wants to come in and talk. She lets him in. He gets aggressive with her, saying, take back the complaint so that he could stay. She says no. There's this back and forth. He produces a sandwich and says, eat it. And obviously, at this point, what's being implied is that there are human remains within that
Right.
sandwich. And she clearly on camera suspects that there's something, most likely that. So that never happened. It never happened.
According to you and my friend, it did not happen. So we got to get it straight
Yeah.
here.
It does. It goes completely against what Jeffrey Dahmer did and why he did it. Not not that I'm saying I understand why Jeffrey Dahmer killed the victims and did X, Y, and Z after,
Right.
but to give away, he wanted his victims to stay with him. He never wanted them to leave in the first place.
So he wouldn't have
He
shared.
wanted
You're
to
saying
keep
he wouldn't
them.
have shared. That's what you're
He
saying.
would not. He
Right.
would not
I
have.
see what you're saying. Now, and a second meme came out of that. There were like sandwich memes all over Twitter, all over social media, everywhere. So that was the second meme that came from the show was the sandwich
Mhm.
thing.
But there's so many people who don't know the case that are watching this and thinking that happened and it didn't. And I get Netflix is in the business to make money and put out something that's going to have high ratings and so like I get it. That's what they're there to do.
Oh, James with a comment.
I know I
Oh.
saw that. I don't know free sandwich.
No, the
Cass
second one after
Elliot.
that.
Yeah, I know Cass
Oh
Elliot
yeah.
with James. But it just I was so angry. I was so angry. This case doesn't, again, I said it, I'll say it again. It doesn't need these extra, let's spin this so it's more dramatic. This case doesn't
They
need
sold
that.
me on it. I was sold.
Yeah,
And
because
I think
you
that's
legit
what,
asked me about it, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
dude, well, that's what they were targeting. They were targeting people like myself. Exactly. It was their target audience. That was
Hmm.
their target audience, audience. So
Yeah. So
not you,
yeah.
not people like you. They didn't want, you know, they weren't going after you guys. The ones that are, you guys have studied the case, man, from, for a long time, and you've read all the books and listened to all the interviews and all the stuff that's out there. But yeah, they were targeting people like myself. Exactly.
And just like I said, it just when you think about it, it just goes against it's illogical. It goes against why he killed it and what he did with his victims after. It
Hmm.
goes against it. So let me just you heard it here on Danny After Dark.
That's a good point, though. I like how you back it up by the sensibility to it, right? And the more realistic approach to it. So you definitely defended your point on it.
Score. You heard it here, Danny After Dark. The sandwich scene did not happen in real life. So the only sandwiches that happen in real life is when Beckham has his one night stands and he has them
Whatever.
make sandwiches for him after. That is true. That has been on camera and that has been proven. If Paul from the podcast was here, yeah, he was there. We all saw it. That's the only true scene with a sandwich on camera. Moving on.
Well, that's what they give, when they pause breaks in the industry. Don't forget the glass of milk.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
Ladies, Beckham is single. You can send me a DM.
Dude,
on,
I can't get a girlfriend till after March. Remember.
So flipping to a more serious note. So now we're at the point where Jeffrey has been caught. He is in jail. He is awaiting trial. He, again, being someone that, to me, he's very upfront with what he's done. He's not hiding what he's done. When the defense wants him to basically plead guilty by reason of insanity, and he says no. He could have gotten a much better sentence, and he was, no, I knew what I was doing. No,
right.
So I thought I liked that they portrayed that aspect, because it would have been an easy way out, and they did that accurately. So the trial happens, and we see the victim families' impact statements.
Yeah.
That was, okay, I just bashed Netflix for like over a half hour. That was so well done and so tasteful and so on point. So props for Netflix for that. There have been what's the word? Some side by sides of the documentary actors and actresses portraying the victims' families, and then the side by side of the real victims' families from the actual court trial. And it's just spot on. These actors and actresses that they hired to do that scene alone really, really did right by the victims' families. So,
yeah,
especially,
for me, it was kind of different to see the how the case happened, with everything, the court proceedings and everything, and then like you said, everything for the portrayal of the victims' families and things like that, and going forward after he goes to prison and whatnot. It was pretty interesting to see the outcome after everything after everything happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which I got a few notes left, but we're getting there. So, okay. So as you just mentioned, so now he goes to prison, trial's over. So the one thing so Jeffrey Dahmer's lawyer has been very open with saying that Jeffrey, in real life, Jeffrey was pretty much Jeffrey. Jeffrey was Jeffrey, and almost goading on other prisoners. So that is true. And then being in just the general public, no, that's not the right word. General population. His lawyer felt he was going to get killed really, really quickly. And he did. There was that first attempt, and he did survive. So that did happen. But again, Jeffrey Dahmer did himself no favors in prison. He did himself no favors. He could have laid low, but he didn't. It was just, some of the scenes with like the food and like the taunting of the other inmates, accurate. Christopher Scarver ultimately is the gentleman who murdered Jeffrey Dahmer. That, we see how that played out, but they dragged it out, and again, in a way that it did not happen. So I can't say for sure about the, him, Christopher Scarver, going out of his way to find out why Jeffrey Dahmer's there. I don't know if that did or did not occur, but the actual murder scene that got dragged out, it did not play out that way. In the documentary, as we see on Netflix, Christopher, the guard leaves. That did. So that is true. Christopher then attacks the other inmate that is working on cleaning duty, then goes to Dahmer. And then there's this long conversation of, God and why I'm doing this. And I'm God's vessel. And this is what I'm doing. And how could you do this? And, all these flashbacks as Jeffrey's being murdered, as to victims and whatnot. That didn't happen that way. In reality, Christopher Scarver was with these two inmates. The jailhouse guard left. He attacked Dahmer first, then attacked the other inmate. And it was quick. It was a quick attack. And
usually most of them are in prison. Like you gotta temps all the time, and you just kind of do your quick thing and you're gone, right? I mean, that's what you usually read about. So it seems like that would be the case in this, something quick and you're gone. So that for two reasons. Number one, they don't know it was you that did it. And you don't get in trouble. And then also for retaliation purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, in this case, they're mostly gang related, of course, in prison and all kinds of stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. In this case, we know it was Christopher Scarver, where there's only three people in the room. Right. But the way it played out on Netflix versus how it was in real life, it didn't happen that way. They made it more dramatic, more sensationalized on the documentary, and it just wasn't like that. So I was kind of disappointed in how they did that. But I get why they did it, because it was quite a scene and entertaining to watch, but not reality. So the end of the show, of the documentary, after the 10 episodes, they do, which I do appreciate, end it by showing pictures and dates of all of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims, like their actual pictures of the victims and in their dates. So I did like that ending touch. Before I get to the community's response on it, because there was a lot there. Beckham, what was your question? I want to make sure we answer that.
Well, I have 3 questions for you.
3?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
The first one is, if you would have been a correspondence person to the writer or the writers of the show, and we don't have all night here, so what's the one thing that you would have changed? Maybe one of the false narratives and made it true, or just maybe included something that you feel should have been included but wasn't. Does one thing come to mind about the true story of Jeffrey Dahmer, the monster?
I'm going to cheat and give 2 answers. I'm going to give a takeaway and a put in.
Okay, it's fine.
So basically a pulling out and pulling in, if you will. Like and subscribe. Jesus. So I would have had them take out the whole sandwich thing, because it never happened. And it's putting that out there that other people may have eaten, no, that never happened. Take that out. What I wish they put in was the police officers, when they responded to 14-year-old Konarak, that victim at the apartment complex. And I would have liked them, the officers on the documentary, to play out what was actually in the 911 call. It was way more laughing and making fun of. It wasn't derogatory, but it was way more than it was really toned down in the documentary. And the officers weren't like that in real life. So I wish they added how the officers.
Now, before I forget this part, if I were you, with your show, with your podcast, your background, you're educated and all that kind of stuff, and your knowledge on these cases, I would, send an email to these studios and offer your services. You never know; it's worth a try. You never know until you give it a shot. But as to be an advisor on these stories, because it seems like it definitely was a success for Netflix, I believe. You had memes come out of it, and that's always, a good thing in social media. But yeah, I think you should definitely write Netflix, write whatever studios that could be out there. You just never know. Somebody might come across it, and um, I'm learning that, like, the progression of that is changing. The outlook of that is changing. Hollywood is always looking for help, for creativity, and something, searching for the right people to bring the right information, because information is key, and that's in anything, right? Um,
Mhm.
so for their shows. So I don't know. I would just say give it a shot. You never know.
Good
So that's a good
idea.
example of this. Was that's why we're talking about it.
Okay.
Now my second question would be, where where does he rank in your top 10 of serial killers? Is your you this is your thing. The serial killer thing is yours. So where do you rank him now? And how would you rank him? And I'm sorry, where do you rank him in your top 10, and why, if that's
Okay.
possible?
Yeah. So obviously, number one is Ted Bundy. I would say Jeffrey Dahmer's actually, he's probably the second case that I know the most about. So to me, he would be number two. And I'm not just saying this because of the documentary, but um, yeah, number two. And I think it's because he's so he's so opposite of Ted Bundy and what we see with, for example, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, which they do reference John Wayne Gacy in this documentaries as well. And that where Bundy and Gacy, so many others are kind of either trying to deny or minimize. Jeffrey doesn't do that. And the psychological aspect of why he did what he did after the murders, why he would consume them. It's like, from a
That's
psychology
creepy
background, it's
when you
just
say it like that.
fascinating
That's creepy how you say it. So where would you put him? Two?
too.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought
I think
two, but
society puts, when you think of like top
yeah,
five, it's
sure.
everybody says Bundy, Dahmer, Gacy, Ramirez,
Mm.
Ed Gein,
Ooh, speaking of
those.
Ramirez, plug it in now.
So yeah. So then what is your third question?
All right. Okay. So my final question is, did his environment lead him to be who he became, or was he already just a monster, and just like you said, just progressed?
Oh, this is nature nurture that we kind of
You got,
talked about.
yeah. Was it? Do you think there was a shot at some point where it could have diverted towards just a normal life? That's it. That just answer that. Was there a chance that it could have
Yes.
diverted to a normal life? Do you think? And that's it.
I think
Yes or
there's
no?
several opportunities where he could have gone on a different path.
Wow, that's great. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah,
But
we
you
don't.
can say
I
that
mean,
about
no, we don't
any.
have no that we can go that you can go another 2 hours into that. But
Yeah.
that's just for me personally. What you think on that? Okay.
I would like to
Wow.
think, in my opinion, I would think so. I can think of many. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
My lighting is going down because it's getting very dark. As we're winding down here. So the community, kind of wrapping things up a lot, the community response from this Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix documentary. The From what I was reading, the victims' families, the community of Milwaukee were not happy with this documentary. And I understand why. They are stating they were not um, either not informed or not kind of asked their um, uh, not opinions on it, but for their information, in that this is opening up a big wound from Milwaukee. And they're right. It's bringing this all back to light. It's capitalizing on it.
Mhm.
It's sensationalizing it. It's not only that, but think about it. If you're a victim's family, you went through the trial, this, and then you're watching it and you're seeing Netflix is changing this, Netflix is changing that. They're adding this, they're not adding it. They're just changing what happened to your family member. I can get why they'd be really outraged. However, one thing that is interesting too is if it's taken this long for this type of documentary to come out and reopen that wound, they're kind of lucky. And I don't mean that in a rude way, because if you think about it, how many Ted Bundy documentaries are there? How many John Wayne Gacy ones are there where it's rehashed, especially Ed Gein too, over and over and over? And if that hasn't been done with Jeffrey Dahmer, their community's been very lucky because people want to talk about it. And I get why it would be a painful thing to have to relive, because think about it, a lot of people are watching it for entertainment, and there's nothing entertaining about it. So that is all of my notes for the review on the Netflix series Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Beckham, was there anything that
No.
any of your takeaways, things that we didn't discuss that you want to
No, well, I mean, like,
put in there?
like we talked about, Netflix targeted people like myself. Seemed like it was a success for them. It reached, the pillars of social media. That's what they wanted to do. It was talked about. I learned a little bit about, I've learned the truths on it now. And I've like I even had a personal, you know, attribute to it because of my friend and that was his aunt. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's been a learning process. I mean, it's been a learning process for me on the story for sure. And again, I see at first, like when I first met you, we were getting to know each other, and I was like, "Yeah, you watch these Netflix shows." You told me about your interest in the serial killers, and you were like, "Yeah, but I'm not really." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, there's all these shows," and you're like, "Yeah, but they're not always true." And I was like, "Nah, they got to do their research." I mean, you know what I mean? That's what I'm sitting here thinking as a fan, right? Or
Mhm.
of watching the shows, and but no, you brought it out that a lot of stuff is not always you know put forward in these shows. So it's been good to do this, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. And thank you everybody for sticking around and for joining us with this. This has been great. Again, if you watched it, leave a comment. This will stay up. So something that you took away from it, or something, any comments on it, I would really like to hear, because whether you watched it because you already knew the case or just for entertainment value, let us know. My takeaway I'm giving to everybody is just be mindful of documentaries like this, because you're not always getting, it can be sensationalized and kind of repurposed for dramatic purposes. And just keep that in mind when you're watching it. But if you guys liked this, let us know in the comments. If there's any other true crime documentaries that you want this channel to review, leave it down below. And for you guys, I will watch it and give a review. Other than
Hold on,
that,
I want to say one last thing.
oh
The
shit.
next time you guys are about to dive into that really good juicy barbecue sandwich you're about to take in, just always be mindful.
All right. And Mr. Beckham is never welcome back at the show again. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And
Good night, everybody.
remember, we don't live in darkness, right, Beckham? Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.